Tonight, I want to talk about parasocial relationships, Eastern dynamics versus Western dynamics, politics, and my plans for the future. Parasocial relationships are the basis of YouTube. Following somebody online or in media without them knowing you, knowing them without a reciprocal relationship, that is a parasocial relationship. So any host of any TV program or otherwise, who you know fairly well, but does not know you, that is what is referred to as a parasocial relationship. And for very many people, these are starting to eclipse their real life relationships. I have thousands of parasocial relationships with YouTube creators. And now I have thousands more who are in parasocial relationships with me as a creator. And God knows what's been happening with the censorship of my previous attempts at creating YouTube accounts and other social media platforms. Now let me jump to Western versus Eastern dynamics. It's pretty obvious that I'm a fan of Japanese subculture, and really Asia generally. I appreciate the intentionality of Japanese culture. Everything seems to have a well-considered reason. Even very minute details are taken into serious consideration. It's an attention to detail which is lost in many other cultures. There was some historical figure who referred to China as the branches on the tree of Buddhism and Japan as the flower. I find that to be eloquent. Contrasting the orderliness of Japan against the disorganization of America, I can't stand the criminality of the American system. Every day, so many crimes in the media. Horrible murders, at scale. It's just too much to handle. Unless you go into all of the local news channels, you won't see it. It's hidden out of view. And I saw one video which discussed that China is run by engineers, whereas America is run by lawyers. And that's why their cities are in such better condition. They plan for the future. They consider the collective. Americans are all about what can they get as individuals. The collective be damned. Would you rather have politicians with engineering backgrounds or politicians with lawyer backgrounds? Lawyers lie for a living. They distort truth. Ideally, the legal system should be about justice, but come on, everybody. We all know how it actually happens in the USA. Ultimately, I would hearken on to nomad capitalist, the ideology of go where you're treated best. It is better to be wealthy anywhere than poor anywhere else. It is at this point that I would typically conclude the video, but I am not going to upload this as a short, but as a long-form video, as you can already tell. It's difficult to come to terms with how corrupt and evil the United States seems to be. They revel in the death of innocents. The bombings of Laosha. Laos was completely leveled. The nuking of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. The attempt of Douglas MacArthur to conquer China by going through Korea and bombing the hell out of North Korea. The sanctions on endless countries. The wars in the Middle East. The homelessness, poverty within the United States. The for-profit prison industrial complex. The bought and sold politicians. And the public at large. I wish I could say good things, but truthfully, I just don't really see it. The United States has quite a lot of wealth. However, they're also about $28 trillion in debt. Their reputation is not doing so well, and none of their major metropolises are attractive to me in any way. However, I look to China and I look to Asia broadly, and I see ostensibly nice places worth visiting. I mean, just look at this. They made a trading card surrounding Desert Storm. A whole trading card series. Look at this. It's just peculiar. Who does something like this? It shows that military leadership really does have that sort of comical styling of Dr. Strangelove. I would imagine the United States military has some of the worst tacticians the world has ever known. Although they have the most sophisticated weaponry the world has ever known. It's an odd mix. Horrible tacticians with way too many guns. On that subject, let's speak a little bit about the CHIPS Act. This subsidized the production of semiconductors necessary for computers within the United States. Currently, NVIDIA and AMD, pretty much the entire world, they depend on Taiwan Semiconductor, TSMC, or Taipei Semiconductor. I mean, why not? Hell if I know. They produce like 90% of the world's share of the most recent generations of semiconductors. They are basically footing the bill for research and development because the first generation is always more costly. And they require parts which are produced in Europe by a company called ASML. They produce highly specialized lasers and optics, glass, these sort of things which are necessary for lithography. The big concern over Chinese Taipei, with the US government constantly warning of an invasion, is this is their cash cow right now. There are certain people who are enormously enriched by this monopoly that TSMC currently has. That's the reason NVIDIA is so expensive. It's protectionist policies. This is economic protectionism. They are artificially raising the prices of these goods through anti-competitive behavior. And I can understand, I don't necessarily fault those involved, but it seems like it's going to be short-lived. China is circumventing being banned from production, being banned from import for the newest generation of chips by creating their own national fabrication company called SMIC. And it's estimated that somewhere between 2030 and 2040, they will be on par with what TSMC is doing. And the big bottleneck would be competing with ASML for producing these highly specialized lenses or whatever it is that they need. Lenses and lasers both. And when that happens, we can be sure to see the price of semiconductors drop dramatically. And it's also worth noting that the United States strategy is short-sighted and economic protectionist because up to 130 nanometer chips are used for various purposes. One does not even need the newest architecture of 2 nanometers and lower. Of course, it's nice, but it's not mission critical to the military. And ultimately, if the CCP gets a hold of a couple hundred or 1,000 graphics cards, they can run AI. They can do what they need to do. It's not like you're going to be able to lock them out of this technology. Even old, outdated hardware can still do this stuff. You can have like a 15-year-old card and still manage to set up an AI server farm with 15-year-old technology. 2 nanometer chips are nice, but 130 nanometer chips are still used in all sorts of applications. So it's not as clear cut as let's keep them from getting the AI chips. But I don't think that Congress and the Senate and the presidency and all of the various investors and all of these other people, I think that they're relatively short-sighted. They don't think in this sort of way. Probably a handful of congressional whips understand very well the economic triggers that this entails. Increasing the price of semiconductors is very profitable for those that produce and sell them. And I would guess that's the primary motivation. And they justify this to a bunch of boomers by saying we have to stop the Chinese threat. So I see the CHIPS policy as short-sighted economic protectionism. And it's very funny that Trump sought to repeal the CHIPS Act, which would bring investment into Arizona, creating our own fabrication facilities. It is probably one of the only good things that the U.S. government has been spending taxpayer money on. It's one of the only things that the U.S. has invested in that will actually generate a return on investment. And of course, Trump wants to veto it, favoring private investment instead. All of the fear-mongering about Asia, especially about China, they tell Westerners, they have a social credit system. They track everything that you do in China. If you piss off the CCP, you'll really regret it. But look at what they're doing in the United States. They have Palantir to do the exact same thing. The shadow banning on social media is just out of this world. There's no way it's any worse in China. Ultimately, wherever you are, where you're wealthy, that's the best. So if you're in a country and they're not treating you well, you'll look to the other country and see that it could be better. It doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. I think immigrants tend to get favor because it means that you've done something to be a part of a society beyond simply being born there. It means that you have taken initiative in a way that not everybody has. I'll conclude this segment with saying, war, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing other than population reduction. That's the brutal truth. It's population manipulation and reduction. They want people to work. They want to prune the tree of bad actors. I wonder to myself often if there may be more important things than nationality when it comes to global politics. If somehow many of these world leaders connect in some sort of higher level of organization than mere statehood. This is to say, perhaps the barriers between countries are artificial, and economic cooperations, banking associations, maybe even, dare I say, Freemasonry, may be more important than mere nationality, and that these countries agree to fight each other to prune populations. That's a concern of mine. War, population, it's a unfortunate, disgusting part of being a human, to recognize just how difficult it is to manage populations at scale. Millions upon millions of people, even billions. I say to all according to their capacities, to all according to their capabilities. Live and let live. Don't hold good people back. But undoubtedly, there are some bad people on this earth. And what do you do with them? So for as much as I know, there is still more that I do not know. And at least I know that. As far for what I want to do with my life, I want to work on a ton of projects. I fill my days with games and political commentary. I'm a decent software developer, and I think I'd be pretty good at helping to manage a project. Many projects, even. I think I could fulfill executive roles in leading businesses. I try my hands at many things. I have a plethora of projects that I want to work on. I'm extremely adaptable. So of course I'd like to be this financier type figure. Somebody with enough money to basically launch any business I want to. Run some restaurants, develop some games, any sort of industry, any kind of manufacturing. Improving designs is something that I'm passionate about. Improving functionality, ensuring that things operate efficiently. Resource management. I'm open to pursuing further education, getting a master's degree or a PhD somewhere, another bachelor's, maybe a law degree, but I'm extremely adverse to attending anything that would require me to go to a campus. I don't really see much point in that. If I can't do it online, then I don't know that it's worth doing. And of course, I don't have the funds to enroll right now. Otherwise, I probably would. And yes, I may try my hand at running for office, because it seems that unfortunately the United States has a critical lack of leadership. And while I would not have anticipated myself to be the one to step up to try to fill that role, I suppose I could. So the goal is to set up a homestead, so I can garden and exercise in the way that I feel is most efficient for me. Play soccer for 30 minutes to an hour a day. Raise animals and live a good life. Free from economic pressures. Only then do I really feel like I can actually start to truly achieve my potential. Once the economic barriers fall, it will be smooth sailing from there.